Hello everyone, welcome to episode 27 of August Wisdom. 31 episodes in 31 days. Of course, we're now coming to the final few episodes of this series, but I will of course be continuing on well after August. Today we're going to be talking about the evolutionary view of history. Welcome to the Deep Psychology Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Edwards, author, coach, and podcaster. We cover deep insights into your psychology, helping you grow in psyche and spirit. Make sure to subscribe to Deep Psychology on Spotify or Apple to stay up to date. You can also visit the website deep-psychology.com, visited by tens of thousands of people every month for lots of free resources. If you want to go deeper with this work, you might like to do coaching with me, head to the website for more details. It's time for today's episode. So, the evolutionary view of history. What I'm going to propose to you today is that basically you can see human history as a kind of movement forwards and continuing moving forward of humanity in many dimensions. In the technological dimension, of course, this is very obvious. We went from living in the jungle to the savannah and in the outdoors to what we have in the modern day with our electricity and all our skyscrapers and our trains and our planes and all the other remarkable technology. That's very obvious that there's technological advance. Now, you can certainly argue that it's not always a positive advance, right? But there's an advance there, right? Morally, we have come a very, very long way over the course of our history, and now we're reaching a stage where our moral concern is basically being obliged to become global for the very first time. That doesn't mean that we're all guaranteed to have a global moral concern, but we're certainly being pushed in that direction. A lot of us, especially younger generations in the most advanced countries, have a global outlook. And this is simply unthinkable if you look back in human history when people lived in bands of 30, 50 people and they basically stayed in a very small area for their entire lives, and they had no idea what was beyond the hill or over the valley or whatever it was. It's really remarkable. Technological, moral, there's so many dimensions that we could talk about here. There's economic development, of course. There's political development. There is values development. What we value changes and grows over time. And you can see this in human history. How we relate to violence. We're currently living in the most peaceful period in human history. The news will never tell you this, by the way, but we are currently living in the most peaceful period in human history. It's called the Long Peace. There's not been a war between major powers since the Second World War. Debatably, you could say the Cold War, I suppose, but in any case, it is the most peaceful period in human history since the Second World War, which is quite remarkable. We are actually in it right now. We are in the most peaceful period in human history. Let that sink in. So there's so many dimensions that we could go into. Pretty much in any dimension you consider, you can find evolution in it. And I've talked about this in previous episodes of August Wisdom. Here I just want to make it very explicit in terms of human history. So when you apply this to human history, sort of the principle that things are always evolving and moving forward somehow, even if in the short term it maybe appears that something terrible is happening or we're moving backwards, actually everything is moving forwards. What you can actually see history as is not some kind of random process or some, a series of random events created by human stupidity or whatever. The typical views of history that we have, we can actually see it as this kind of, it's not pre-programmed in the sense that, it was all written down. I don't really believe in that. I feel like things are organic and creative, and we cannot predict what's going to happen. But we can see that it has a definite movement towards something. It's definitely going somewhere. It's improving. We are coming closer. We are becoming more sensitive. We're becoming more aware over time. When you look at history this way, it's not that the unpleasant becomes any more pleasant necessarily. It's that it all takes on a new significance. You know, you look at the Second World War, and it's a tragedy, and especially what Hitler did and what the Jewish people suffered, for example. But you look at it and say, well, if we look at it under the microscope, that everything is evolving and moving forward, well, this opens us up and we can say, well, actually now we're in the most peaceful period in human history since the Second World War, right? And after all the millennia of just bloodshed and atrocities that have plagued human history, perhaps finally the Second World War was enough of a tragedy. I mean, listen, remember what happened in Japan at the end of the Second World War as well. Just a complete catastrophe. Maybe this is how we learn as a species. Like, this is how we actually realize, shit, we cannot just conquer and fight one another as though it was just like a big joke, like playing in the playground. This is real. And if we don't get our act together, millions of people are going to die. We might even kill ourselves, like the entire species. We might kill ourselves, extinguish ourselves if we don't get our act together. Now, obviously, I think a lot of this happens on the subconscious level. We don't really tell ourselves this, especially not at the time. You know, I'm pretty sure people in the late 1940s were not looking optimistically about the future. It probably took till about the 1960s when the next generation came along. They were probably very scared and a bit like we are now with climate change and AI and Donald Trump and the Middle East and all the rest of it. Very pessimistic and very kind of contracted. I bet they weren't looking at it like that. But looking back now, we can see actually, well, you know, the chances of, say, Britain and Germany going to war now are zero. That is not going to happen as things are right now. And that maybe is a result of all the shit that happened in the 20th century, right? So what I think this brings, it's not being naive and it's not being happy-clappy. It's having a deeper trust that things are actually moving forward. And this is not just a thesis of mine, right? There are evolutionary stages all over the place and they tend towards being greater, more loving, more aware. And these stages govern our growth. They govern societal growth. I also take a lot of my conclusions from Steven Pinker's book, which is called The Better Angels of Our Nature, which is a fantastic book, and it really shows you very clearly how humans have become remarkably less violent over time. Despite things like the Second World War, you can see that there is a remarkable trend towards non-violence in our species. And I always remember a quote from Yuval Noah Harari, which I'm not going to read to you right now because I can't remember what it is and I don't have it in front of me, but the basic thesis of his in this quote is that when you look at things from a very short-term perspective, inevitably you see decline. I mean, there's many psychological reasons for that, but we tend to see decline when we look at things in the short term. However, when we zoom out on things, on human history, and we look at it from the perspective of like a satellite or like a distant planet, we can actually see that things are moving towards unity, and to such an extent that we would have to say that our destiny is unity. Our destiny as a species is unity. And honestly, I have soaked in this perspective so much that I don't feel scared of the current political situation. I don't feel scared of AI. I don't feel scared of climate change, because I realise that the human way is to have huge problems on our hands and to find a way to solve them. Imagine people who were living at the start of the 20th century. Imagine you were born in like 1900 and you lived the first 45 years of your life, 1914 to 1918 and then 1939 to 1945. Imagine you lived through all that. How would you see the world? Of course, you would see it negatively, and you would probably think that the world is going to end in about 10 years. That's what we think now, right? And it's kind of natural for us to think like that, but we are thinking very short term. Over the long haul, things tend towards unity. This is observable. It's an observable fact. And we have to remember that as we're coming up against these obstacles, and as we're framing sort of the human destiny in our own mind to ourselves. If we frame it negatively, we will act negatively, and we will feel that on an emotional level. We'll feel negative on an emotional level, and we're not going to do anything to improve our situation. If we view things positively, we're more empowered, and we're not so bummed out about our situation and the situation of the world. Does it mean that undesirable things aren't going to happen? No, but you can pick yourself up and you can keep going. And I think when you start to see things in this way, you just gain a whole new sort of deeper trust in things that a lot of people don't have, and I don't see that they have it, primarily because I just don't think they see things from this point of view. So that's the evolutionary view of history, that basically over time the human destiny is towards unity and advance. Right? And this includes all our complaints about how bad things are. That is also a form of advance, because if we didn't have the kind of the drive within us to make things better, we would never complain about anything, right? So make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with the next few episodes of August Wisdom, and of course everything that comes after that. Plenty more to come from Deep Psychology. And if you'd like to do coaching with me, please head to the website for more details. I would love to get to know you and to work with you. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next episode. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please leave a review and make sure to subscribe on Apple or Spotify. If you'd like to go deeper with this work, head to deep-psychology.com to do coaching with me. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon.